Hello, you're watching TVP World Talks. I'm Emmanuel. Emmanuel Macron and Keir Starmer are holding talks in London today with mutual cooperation as well as the so-called coalition of the willing on Ukraine being at the top of the agenda. However, both European leaders also need to deal with US President Donald Trump, whose unorthodox approach to governance has made it necessary for Europe to think outside the box. Can France and Britain set their former differences aside to lead a revival of Europe as a high-level political player? Joining us now is Romain Le Quiniou, Managing Director at Euro Créative. Hello and welcome to TVP World.
Good morning, thanks for having me.
So let's begin with a bit of background. Why are we talking about this particular meeting as something quite revolutionary? Weren't those relations, those bilateral relations, on a decent enough level before?
Revolutionary would be too much, in my opinion, but yeah, it's a historic visit for the simple reason that this is the first official high-level visit, state visits, basically, since Brexit for European leaders. So it's a great honor and it's a great symbol for France, for Macron. And today it means also that UK and France need to find solutions, not just for their bilateral relation, but at the European level. And this is exactly what we are talking about. Generally, over the past few years, we know that the relations between France and the UK, or more generally between the UK and the European Union, and most of its member states have been complicated for technical reasons, but now we need to find cooperation at a large scale because the challenges that we are facing today as Europeans need the cooperation of every European, and this is what we are going to talk about. Mostly defense and security, and here UK and France have special responsibility, and they cannot lose time to have some bilateral disputes on smaller issues, even if we know that domestic issues are still a big part of the bilateral relation, and here I'm referring especially to migration.
So the fact that this is the first visit at this level since 2008, which is an astonishingly long time, is not just because of the Brexit. It's actually, as you suggested, bilateral issues. Can you tell us a bit more about this, and also to tell us whether you think that these bilateral issues might still cast a shadow over the cooperation between Britain and France in what is really a critical moment for Europe as a whole, given the threats that we're facing?
No, absolutely. As you say, this is just the proof that France and the UK have very difficult relations at the political level since Brexit. And it's not just Brexit and the technical complexities of it. It was mostly political. And for a simple reason, on one side in the UK, in London, the UK government, through the Conservatives, was quite vocal about its opposition to France. And in the same time, I have to say that in Paris, in France, the government of Macron was also not very willing to cooperate for a simple reason that we wanted here in France, not the citizens of course, but the government, teach a lesson to the UK and saying basically that you decided to leave the European Union, why should we continue to cooperate as Europeans? And that was quite an ambivalent situation between London and Paris, where there was a lot of enmity at the political level. It reached a lot of high political declarations and even some action in the Channel Sea, which were very bad because, again, we don't have time to lose these very important relations for Europe. And today, I hope that we will have the confirmation that UK and France are back together when it comes to positive and proactive cooperation, because we cannot afford to not have it. So I really hope that when it comes to the bilateral, tricky issues, and here again I'm referring to migration, we can see already that in the British press there are some critics about how Starmer is dealing the negotiation with Macron when it comes to countering illegal migration. But I really hope that they will announce, and it was promised 2 days ago, that they will announce some agreement, some implementation of agreement, and we will see how it is received both in the UK and France. But again, we don't have time to focus too much on bilateral politics. We need larger cooperation right now.
So it seems that there is chemistry between Emmanuel Macron and Sir Keir Starmer, but there is the lingering question concerning whether there can also be chemistry between Britain, France, the European Union in general, and Donald Trump. Do you think that these two leaders have what it takes to actually negotiate with Trump in a way that's beneficial for our security and also for our trade interests, given that we've got this extended term for agreeing the question of the tariffs until the 1st of August?
Well, chemistry is great, but it's only the cherry on the cake, right? The problem that Macron and Starmer are facing right now, yes, they have a good relations, especially because this is a new government, and Macron also wanted to revisit this relation with the UK. But both leaders are facing difficult situation at home. We know that for Macron since the dissolution of the parliament a year ago, and this is still very much looking like in the autumn will be very hot politically in France. And at the same time, Starmer is facing a crisis of authority at home. So both leaders are not in the best situation at the domestic level. In the same time, as you rightly said, there is this different type of relation and different type of approaches, I would say, between the UK on the one side and France, as well as many European Union member states on the other side when it comes to Donald Trump and how to deal with him. We cannot forget that at the moment it is not been decided what will be the position of the US administration when it comes to tariffs towards the European Union. And it will have some effect on the relationship between the US and the EU, and by effect between the US and France. And we can see that Macron, even in London over the past 2 days, is trying to be, a bit punchy when it comes to Washington and when it comes to Donald Trump. He really would like to see the UK be a bit more on the European Union side rather than trying to negotiate its own agreement like they did for the tariffs with the US. So this is still a lingering issue between UK and France. France hopes that the UK will get closer to France and will get closer to the EU, because simply France believes that the US is going far and more and more away from the European security, and this is the reason why both Paris and London should take responsibility. But taking responsibility means that this meeting should lead to specific announcement and specific deepening of cooperation. It cannot just be once again a meeting online, this time coalition of the willing, just to say that we agree that we need to do something. We have to do something, and we have to do something now for Ukraine and for European security. Talks are not enough. We know that the NATO summit was not a catastrophe. Congratulations. Now it's time to act.
And speaking of acting, do you think that tangible efforts, like, for example, finally seizing the frozen Russian assets, could actually follow?
I don't think so. And that's a problem, because at the moment, at the political level, it's blocked in France, not only in France, but in France in particular. And that's a problem, and this is the specific thing we need to go further. But not only on this, it is about defense and security. At the moment, we can see, and over the past few months, yes, it was great for this coalition of willing, because it showed that some of Europeans, can ally and can find some concrete solutions to help Ukraine. But the coalition of willing was made especially for a potential ceasefire. I mean, today we are not talking about a ceasefire. A ceasefire is not going to happen in the next few months, whether we like it or not. So we need the coalition of willing also to act on things that are ongoing today. And what is ongoing today is that Russia is making small but still existing progress in Ukraine, and the security of Ukraine is more and more difficult because Russia is attacking every night citizens in this country, and in the same time the US is still ambiguous towards its support. So it's up to the Europeans to provide more support, weapons, air defense, close the sky, to help Ukrainians and to help Ukraine. But not only, it's not just about helping Ukraine, it's about helping each other. And here, European security should be also a dimension of our coalition of willing. And I hope that this meeting, historic, if we brand it like this, but it will be historic only if France and the UK are able to formulate historic proposition and deepening of their defense cooperation, because UK-France defense cooperation is the backbone of European security. So I hope that we will hear more about defense industry. We will hear more about what concretely the coalition of willing can do. And I hope also that there will be a bit of a step forward when it comes to nuclear deterrence of France and the UK for Europe.
Speaking of which, do you think that the extension of the nuclear umbrella, for example, to countries on the eastern flank, would be an option here? And also, could it be carried out in a way that also does not alienate the United States, which after all is still providing its own nuclear umbrella for NATO countries? NATO is still a thing, but we still need to prepare for any eventuality. Can this sort of like two-pronged approach be actually accomplished, being how difficult it is diplomatically?
It is very important indeed to remind, and especially, I'm from France, and in France it's very important to remind that NATO still exists, the US umbrella, nuclear umbrella for Europe still exists. Important to remind. Still, you are better protected if you have more protection. So it's important, given the situation on the European continent as well as in the global affairs, because we know that the US is very much focused on other theaters. It is very important that Europeans take care of their own security. It means also taking part in the nuclear deterrence. Now, what we know between UK and France is that both countries have been signaling some more assertive position. On the one side, France has been repeating what has been said before, but France is repeating it more often, that French nuclear deterrence has a European dimension, and France is launching a strategic dialogue on nuclear deterrence all over Europe. And second, the UK has recently bought some F-35 in order to add an airborne component to its nuclear deterrence. So both countries are signaling more ambitious, assertive positions. We know that the two countries have a specific link here, because already in 1995, it has been declared between the two heads of states that if the interest of one of the country is threatened, there is no way that the interest of the other country is not. So this is this type of signaling at the wording that we can expect today. I hope it will happen, but it's about nuclear deterrence, and most of the discussions are being closed door. What can be done is political strategic signaling to make sure that UK and France prove that they are ready to do more for European security, including when it comes to raising the nuclear deterrence level in Europe.
Romain Le Quiniou was our guest today here on TVP World. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you very much. Have a good day.
And I'm Emmanuel. You're watching TVP World. Please do stay with us.